What's up, everyone? Welcome into the All 22 NFL show. As always, you have Chris and Ray. It's kind of in that starting to be that offseason lull a little bit, Ray, but we do have some really exciting things to still talk about, right? I think this is kind of ranking season, which is what we're going to jump into. I don't have any story for you today. I was hoping maybe you'd come up with something. That's not really your style, though, so I'm thinking you didn't. Is that correct?
No. Yeah, don't. Whenever you put me on the spot, I do not deliver. Don't ever I can't pinch hit. I'm not a pinch hitter. Like, you can't just call me up like, hey, you could get out there and get it done. Like, no, it's not going to happen. I need a plan. I can't be put on the spot. So I got absolutely nothing for you.
Yeah, next time I'll try to think of another Tony Spumoni story. But for now, we're going to do some rankings, right? Quarterback rankings. The system has been updated. So if you are already subscribed, you can go to the players page. You can go to your draft client, and you're going to see the updated rankings in the system. But for those of you that are not subscribed, I highly suggest you go to all-22.com or go to the App Store today, and you can download the app, sign up for All 22, start joining leagues, and you can see the rankings that we're going to be talking about today. Ray, the rankings that we're going to be showing are really a kind of a blend of a bunch of different data points, right? It's age, it's experience, it's PFF grading, it's injury history, it's opinions of several different scouts that we kind of talk about internally as a team. And we kind of crunch these numbers, we put together these rankings, but that doesn't ultimately mean that that's what we think the ranking should be, right? Like, we might think that Trevor Lawrence should be number one, right? Like, that's a take you might have, maybe not me, maybe a take you might have. But I think today, why don't we go through the rankings in the system and talk about maybe how we would do things differently, what we like about it, maybe what we disagree with. How's that sound?
I love talking about my disagreements. It's like my favorite thing to do. So by all means, let's jump in. Like, rankings is my least favorite, but disagreement is my absolute favorite. So it's going to be a good one.
All right. Why don't you go ahead and share? I'm going to switch up the background for you. Got that. You're going to do.
Here we are.
Beautiful. All right. Beautiful. All right. So people can see the screen, right? This is the All 22 system. We are on the players page. We have it sorted by quarterback, and this is the ranking for the quarterbacks. So we're going to start with the top five, Ray. You don't have to necessarily like hide it, but maybe you can just like stop showing everything all at once. But here, I guess maybe we just do the top 10 since that's basically what you're showing. And we'll start at the top. Number one in the system is currently Chiefs quarterback Patrick Mahomes. Number two in the system, Ravens quarterback Lamar Jackson. Number three on the list is Bills quarterback Josh Allen. Number four on the list is Bengals quarterback Joe Burrow. And number five is Chargers quarterback Justin Herbert. Do you know what's the weirdest thing that stuck out to me, Ray, when I just read those names? How are they all already like 28 to 29 years old?
Because you're older than that. And
significantly.
Yeah, but you see, they're all within 2 years of each other, 2.5 years of each other. But it kind of feels like Mahomes and Jackson have been in the league for longer than the others, even if that's not necessarily the case. As far as it just feels like they've been in the league significantly longer than someone like Herbert. Mm-hmm. But maybe that's just because the Chargers don't get enough airtime in primetime games like they should. And so we don't hear about him as much. So it's almost like out of sight, out of mind subconsciously. But obviously, he's high up there on most people's top quarterbacks list. And I think in some order, form, or fashion, people would have these guys as at the top sort of handful of quarterbacks in some form or another in the NFL today.
Yeah, I think definitely the top four. I think five, there are going to be people that debate that, probably you. But there are people that debate Herbert. The other thing that I'll just kind of point out, one thing that, like, whether you have it in this order or not, and we can kind of discuss what we have, but before we do that, like, when we talk about position groups and how they're ranked, we talk about, like, at least me personally, right? Like, I go for players that have reached their prime or are in the prime, beginning their prime, rather than like a young guy that's like up and coming, right? Like, Jayden Daniels had an amazing rookie season, showed so much promise, but it was still only 1 year, right? Like, so I'm not going to buoy him to the top of this list just because he had one amazing year. I need to see more of that, right? And these guys that are all here have showed us that consistently for 5 or maybe 6 years now, right? Most of them. So I think that in my opinion, this is the right top 5. Whether or not the order is what I would have it is a different story. But I do typically say, like, go for the prime years, right? And quarterback, that's that age, probably 27 to 29 season. For running back, they would be dinosaurs at that point. So you go for like that age, like maybe 23 season, right? So just pointing out that it is very different by the position that you're judging. But in this case, quarterback, these are the prime years. I agree with these guys being at the top.
And the thing is too, because I'm the ceiling chaser here, right? But when you're talking about quarterback, the price to pay for missing is so great. And for those who are new, right? It's everyone's first podcast. It's always someone's first podcast or first episode. All 22 is essentially if the NFL threw all players into a pool and just had a startup draft from the very beginning with all positions, all players in the league, how would that shake out? Well, they're going to take their quarterbacks first, and the best quarterbacks are going to go first, right? So how would NFL teams starting their franchise from scratch have these guys ranked, or in which order would they select them? So in a case like quarterback, where the lifespan has grown such that if you're at the top of your game or you're at the top of that position group, you could be playing for 14 years at high quality levels of play. Then if you're 28 or 29, then I'm fine with that. Whereas a wide receiver, I'm probably not taking them earlier than some of the other 22, 23-year-olds who maybe haven't shown as much just yet, but have some promise and flash. So at quarterback in particular, I think all these top guys here, especially that top 4, are right in that sweet spot. They have the track record, but they're still young enough to where we can project, health permitting, freak injuries notwithstanding, they can play for at least another 6 years at a high level of play before we could realistically consider or project any sort of drop off in their play.
Right. And I think starting with Mahomes, he is quarterback 1 for me. So I do agree with that in this list. And I was just pulling up his numbers, right? So this is he's played 8 years in the NFL. His rookie year, 72.6. Every year but one since then has been over 83. Okay. Besides that 1 year, every year has been above 85, right? So we're talking about 6 graded seasons over 85, 3 above 90. Like, we are talking about an elite of the elite quarterback. And I think when teams would ask themselves that question of the quarterbacks, who would I draft first? I don't think it's a question. It's Mahomes. And the biggest reason as well is he has Super Bowl experience, right? Like, this guy has proved that he can win the big game and get back to it consistently. There's not another quarterback on this list that can say that, right? And I think that's a big part of this conversation.
Well, maybe you could make this case for someone like Allen, but outside of that, let's say, for Mahomes in particular, he's got this high level of play, but his situation, I mean, he's had a below average offensive line for a couple of years now, and he can never get sort of in sync with his receivers the last couple of years because of injury. You had Rashee Rice. You haven't been able to have like Rashee Rice and Xavier Worthy and all the weapons that they projected to have at one point in time really on the field together at all. And he hasn't had a great running game either. And yet he is still putting up great performances. He's still, yes, taking the Chiefs to the Super Bowl, but even in general, even if the stats themselves, the volume, gross numbers aren't what they were 3 or 4 years ago when he had Tyreek Hill, for example, and Travis Kelce still in the later stages of his prime, he's still playing at a top 5 level with a very subpar situation. And we talked about how opportunistic their draft was last month. So to that end, if this is the low watermark for Mahomes, but I don't see how you can go anywhere else besides Mahomes at this spot. So he's my number 1 as well, even with the subpar situation and environment around him. Only a 2.1% turnover worthy play ratio. So we talk about how the league going to a too high shell and that he kind of forced defenses to evolve to take away those big plays through the air. And that's fine. He hasn't forced the issue based on the defensive adjustment. He's still taking care of the football and, managing an offense at an incredibly high level. Only 6 quarterbacks in 2024 had a lower turnover worthy play ratio. And we know Mahomes is still taking his shots and a lot is put on his shoulders given what's around him. So again, he's been able to adapt to any situation that's been thrown at him in the league thus far and throughout his career arc. as his offensive line has kind of ebbed and flowed, as his receivers have faced some turnover, he's still been the guy at a high level week in, week out, year in and year out. So to me, he's the unquestioned number one guy.
Yeah. And that's not the case for everybody. So I've done a bunch of drafts in all 22, and I've seen people with the first pick go other ways, right? I've seen Joe Burrow. I've seen Josh Allen. I've seen Lamar. I still think it's Mahomes, but number 2 for me, I think I do go with Josh Allen. Josh Allen, 91.8 season grade last year in our system, 133 points, which I think was good for 4th or 5th. Really solid, right? But it's the year over year. It's the consistency that he has. I think he has back-to-back years over 90. Oh, excuse me. It's actually the past 3 years, and it's actually 4 of the last 5, right? So we're talking about elite grading for the quarterback position. One of the other reasons I go with him, and this is something that where it goes a little bit deeper, and why fantasy, traditionally maybe you don't have to think about this, but when you start getting into dynasty, when you get into all 22, definitely you have to think about the team that the player's on and the stability of that organization. To me, the Bills are a very stable organization with great coaching, right? They haven't just like swung and missed multiple times and keep refreshing the page. They kind of stick to their guns. They keep adding bodies, right? Trying to make the situation better. But Allen just consistently has done it really, really well. And it showed for him in our system. Would I like to have seen them add a receiver for him? Absolutely. I think that needs to happen at some point in the next couple of years. But if you're talking about the running ability that he has, could that diminish over time? Is he going to start dealing with injuries? Possibly. But there is a little bit of that Big Ben in him where he seems pretty tough and he seems to fight through a lot of the pain. So I don't necessarily know if that's a huge concern for me going forward. For me, it's Allen at 2.
Before I give my take on that, who is your number 3?
Lamar is my number 3.
Oh boy, this is going to be a boring ass podcast if we're in line like this. So I also have Josh Allen at 2. And for me, yes, 29 years old, the running style, sort of the power in his game, but he hasn't shown any signs of following the sort of Cam Newton career arc where after a certain amount of time, Cam Newton was just beat up. And I mean, you just saw it even when he was just throwing the football from the pocket. I mean, his release was just so battered by the time he was in his 30s from all the hits he had taken. That's not been the case with Josh Allen. You don't see any signs of that. And for me, Josh Allen that has had the highest big time throw percentage in the NFL last year. 7.1% of his passes were big time throws. And you just mentioned it. He didn't have this mega alpha receiver to sort of throw the ball to and sort of make things happen. He did that by distributing the ball around to everyone in that offense. Kincaid hasn't necessarily been as great as they had anticipated early on. Tight ends take some time, even those with that sort of receiving arc and trajectory. But he also had the lowest pressure to sack rate in the NFL at just 8% of pressures being converted into sacks. So he's making big time plays through the air. He's avoiding big time negative plays even when he is pressured. And he's doing this all without a superstar weapon on the perimeter to kind of, make things easier for, as we see with other quarterbacks throughout the league. Josh Allen he really is playing like Superman without sort of a Superman supporting cast. There's nothing, they're not terrible by any stretch, but he is missing that alpha piece that other quarterbacks do have the luxury of, like a Joe Burrow with the Jamar Chase and now even Chase Higgins long-term. So Allen, for me, I think is the clear number 2. And I also did have Lamar Jackson at 3. And the one thing that separated those two for me was longevity. Now Lamar hasn't shown signs of really showing a decline either, but there's a difference between being a big, strong, sort of power running mobile quarterback and one who's so fast and agile and explosive. That stuff is what goes away as you enter your 30s for any athlete, right? So you can kind of project that a little bit easier with Lamar than Josh Allen, I would say, at this point. But outside of that, I mean, Lamar Jackson, a dot of 9.4 yards compared to something like 7.7 for someone like Burrow. to me, I think the clear 2 and 3 is Jackson. I won't begrudge anyone for having those two in any specific order. But for me, I think Josh Allen just a little bit above Lamar for me, given sort of the big time throw rate, the ability to avoid sacks and pressures. And I think just projecting wise, he could last a little bit longer because that speed and explosiveness is typically the first to go, regardless of any injury history for an athlete.
Sure. And I agree with those takes. I think, it's also about quantity, right? Like while Allen is a runner and does run, the quantity that he's taking compared to Lamar is quite different. And Josh Allen actually had a higher running grade than Lamar last year. But again, it's about quantity. Lamar was probably running 100 times more than him. That might be an exaggeration, but it might be a big number. So I agree. It's those three. I also will say, right, those are both very stable organizations. I love what the Rams have done. I also think, right, we talk about Allen needs a receiver. Whether or not you agree with the guys that they took, Zay Flower, Rashad Bateman, like they have gone to the well multiple times in Lamar Jackson's career. Hollywood Brown, right? Like they've added first-round pick receivers during his career. Whether or not it pans out doesn't really necessarily matter. But Josh Allen hasn't had that luxury. And it kind of goes to what I talked about with the Packers. It's like when teams kind of like miss the position group of a draft, right? Like it pissed me off that last year the Packers drafted Marshawn Lloyd in the 3rd round when this is the year you probably could have got Marshawn Lloyd type player in the 5th round, right? Like it's like, why are we doing that? It's kind of what it seems like the Bills have done a little bit as well. It's like this draft wasn't necessarily the receiver draft, and they need a receiver. They didn't get one. Last year was the receiver draft. There was a bunch of guys that have been really successful that they traded away from to get Keon Coleman in the 2nd round, right? They could have had Xavier Worthy. They could have had Ladd McConkey, and they didn't get either of those guys and instead got Keon Coleman, who still might be a good player, right? But those other guys are already good players, right? And they traded away from that, which is what concerns me about the Bills and their process a little bit. Still, Allen hasn't shown that it affects him too much. Maybe it does in the playoffs, right? And his team's ability to continue to succeed. Love Allen, love Jackson. I do think there's a discussion at number 4, whether it's Burrow or Herbert. So, you might be looking at, if you want to open Joe Burrow's player card, right? Joe Burrow has 3 years in his career, in his 5-year career, where he has 90 grading, which is fantastic, right? Last year, 93.9, which was insanely high. It was, arguably an MVP season. But Justin Herbert had a 91.7 last year, and 2 of his 4 are in the 90s, and one of them is an 85.4. So I think it is slightly comparable. I also would say I kind of like what the Chargers have done a little bit better than what the Bengals have done, right? Like I think that the coaching choices, I would obviously go with the Chargers coaching rather than the Bengals. I've been kind of a stickler of Zach Taylor quite a bit throughout his coaching tenure. Yes, he took him to the Super Bowl, but it really hasn't progressed at all since then. I think the way they've built the team as well might not be sustainable, right? You pay 2 receivers huge amounts of money. The offensive line looks like it might be in rough shape. Defense is in rough shape. I don't necessarily know how they continue forward. I also think it puts Burrow in a little bit of an injury concern window where I do worry about him and his health. You could say the same stuff about Justin Herbert, that he's dealt with injuries throughout his career, but they invested in 2 of arguably top 10 offensive tackles in the NFL, right? When we do the rankings, both of those tackles might finish top 10 in our rankings. And I love that, right? And then I also love Ladd McConkey and what Justin Herbert has for his receivers, right? The building that they've done, right? Trey Harris, I thought was an amazing addition in the 2nd round. Like I love the way they're building that offense, and not necessarily having to sell their souls to do it. And it can continue to get better because you don't really have to pay any of these guys for quite a while, right? Joe Alt probably has 2 or 3 years before he has to get paid. Same with Ladd. Trey Harris, obviously being a rookie, has 5 years. Like I like what they're doing. So I do think that there is an argument. And I think this is the first year I'm saying it. I think Justin Herbert would be my quarterback 4 above Burrow, who would be my quarterback 5.
So I had Burrow above Herbert, and that's really because I could see the case for either or. I don't know. I just think I've always thought Burrow's just a little bit better. So Burrow was the highest graded passer last year in the league and was kind of tied overall with Lamar. from a grading standpoint over the full course of the season. He had the third highest adjusted completion percentage in the NFL last year, behind just Jalen Hurts and Tua Tagovailoa, but he had more than double each of their big time throws. So he had 38 big time throws last year versus just 14 and 11 for those other two quarterbacks. And obviously, as such, also dwarfed them in big time throw percentage. So when you're completing the ball at that rate, but not just taking easy dink and dunk type of plays, and you are pushing the ball downfield and making big time throws, for me, I see it as a matter of stay healthy for a full year. If we're not going into the year with you grabbing at your wrist before the game, even week 1 kicks off, and there's questions about your calf or whatever else, if he can get a full healthy offseason under his belt and he has his weapons locked up, you do have guys perhaps like Amarius Mims kind of developing and stepping into their own there. That's enough for him to continue his level of play. I just don't think, again, given some of the injury history, I have some of the durability questions about him that I didn't have for the other three above. But Herbert is right there. And the offensive style that he's in with Harbaugh is fantastic. I mean, he was top 4 in big time throw percentage last year and 8th lowest turnover worthy play ratio at 2.1, which is tied for Mahomes. So also taking care of the football while making those big time throws in an offense where they're heavily predicated on running the football downhill and, throwing it downfield off of play action and such. And now you have McCarthy, you're adding those weapons to that offense now. Omari and Hampton in the running game. You have a great offensive line. I mean, it fits Herbert's play like a glove. So if you want to put him above Burrow, then sure, by all means. I think the point we're making here is these two, to me, are in a tier of their own after the top 3. I think 4 and 5 are their own tier as well before we get into 6 and onward. I'm sure a lot of anxious folks, trigger happy folks might want to start putting Jayden Daniels perhaps into that top 5 debate. I'm not there yet. It is just 1 year. We've seen that happen before where they take a step back after that. But I totally understand the case for Justin Herbert because I think the fit there in Los Angeles with him now is just perfect. And they just made that situation even better.
I agree. Okay. So you're going Burrow, then Herbert. We're going to jump into the next group. And I'm actually going to mess up your little screen because I think we have to talk about the next 7 because I think that's where the tier kind of is. So next at number 6, the system, right? It has Jayden Daniels, quarterback from the Washington Commanders. Trevor Lawrence is right after that, the Jags QB. Caleb Williams right after that, Chicago QB. Jordan Love right after that, Green Bay Packers quarterback. Houston Texans, CJ Stroud is next. Then Jalen Hurts with the Eagles. And last one that I want to talk about for this group, so getting to number 12, we have Drake May, the Patriots young quarterback. So the reason I wanted to read those 7 is because I do think there are people out there that are going to have any one of those 7. Sorry for the dog in the background. Any one of those 7 kind of like in some kind of order. Is it definitely Jayden Daniels? I don't know, right? Again, I think there's a case that a sophomore slump could be coming. Also, right, the way that this team's kind of building itself, it is kind of attacking this rookie QB contract window, not necessarily building a long-term strategy, right? You're getting Laramie Tunsil in there. You're adding Deebo Samuel. Terry McLaurin is, getting to that older range of receivers. Don't necessarily know what this team looks like in 3 years, right? When you're talking about a young quarterback that just had his rookie season, not sure it's built to, okay, in 5 years, I could already project what this is going to be. Some of the other guys I can, right? Trevor Lawrence, they've drafted Brian Thomas Jr. and Travis Hunter the last 2 years to play receiver for him. You could kind of get a sense of what this team is going to look like. Caleb Williams, same kind of conversation. I think we've talked about it a little bit to death. And same goes for some of the other guys, right? Jordan Love got his first round pick receiver. They've added a lot of pieces to the offensive line. CJ Stroud, it's kind of a reset year. They've added 2 young receivers. They redid some of the offensive line, although it's probably a step down. Jalen Hurts just won a Super Bowl, right? And has been pretty consistent in the NFL, just never really reaching a high-end play that, you kind of need to be a top 6 quarterback in this league. Drake May, on the other hand, really promising rookie season with just about nothing. And they went and added a ton of weapons for him, added to the offensive line. So that situation this year should look a lot better. Before I go into my rankings, what do you have to say about this group and who do you have at the top?
It's really hard to make the case against Jayden Daniels right now because there is no data supporting a case against him really after his rookie season. It was phenomenal. He led the league in scrambles by a wide margin. I think he had 75 scrambles last year, and the next closest was Bo Nix with 50. The next two were Caleb Williams and Drake May. So maybe it's just a rookie thing as far as these kids just sort of scrambling and making something happen with those young legs when they sense any form of trouble. But of all of those rookies and Rattler, who got some time as a starter, Daniels had the highest big time throw rate and the lowest turnover worthy play rate. Part of that is there was a lot of passes near the line of scrimmage. They did kind of help him out and make it easy for him, which is fine. That's what a good coaching staff is supposed to do with a young quarterback on a contending team. So I think you have to put Jayden Daniels at the top of this list here at 6. But if I'm in a startup draft and say I'm picking 8th, I'm not sweating it if Jayden Daniels goes at 6 and I have to choose between Trevor Lawrence and Caleb Williams. Both of them are in situations that got a whole lot better. They're still both incredibly young. They have great weapons now. They both had, I think, compared to expectations, a bit of a down year, so to speak, in 2024. Caleb was just a rookie, so you really shouldn't pay too much into that, even though some of the sacks taken are concerning. They got an upgrade at play caller there with Ben Johnson coming over from Detroit, so I think there's a huge upgrade to be had there in just situation before you get into the weapons that they added to that offense also. So I'm not sweating it either way. If I get Trevor Lawrence, that's great. He's now got 2 alpha receivers, Liam Cohen offense. Caleb Williams now has another alpha weapon. There are 2 new alpha weapons there in Colson Loveland, Luther Burden, Ben Johnson as his play caller. I'm not sweating either of these 3 names in a startup draft. If 1 or 2 of them goes and I have to select whoever is left over, I think they're all due for, or at least Lawrence and Williams are due for a huge step up. And obviously Jayden Daniels is Jayden Daniels until he gives you a reason to really have concerns or be out on him. You don't overthink it. Even with a sort of mini sophomore slump priced into the expectation there, he's still shown enough to where he's going to be a big time player here. So I think the top 3 names in particular are fine. I would not change those orders. I would not change the order of those at all. And then the next 4 names there, I would probably put, for me, it's between Jordan Love and Drake May. I think based on situation, last year was probably the low point for Drake May. And it's just a matter of, okay, how high can we go from here? Given there's still work to be done in New England, still probably need an alpha weapon. They still have to work that offensive line still at this point. Jordan Love, I think he's in a good system. We'll see how Matthew Golden makes an impact there, but you know what you're going to get with him. I think there's a really high floor there. To me, it's between those 2 names as far as the next 2, which is 9 and 10. I think those 2 would round out my top 10.
Okay. All right. Well, I see it slightly different than you, but I'm on pretty similar track. So I do have Jayden Daniels at 6, just because nobody else has done what he's done, right? Almost a 90 grade as a rookie is incredible. Still just 24 years old. Made the situation better this past year. Situation got even better this offseason. And then I think Trevor Lawrence being the next guy makes sense to me, right? So 25 years old still. It's crazy to me that Trevor Lawrence is still only 25 years old. It seems like he's been in the league just as long as like Justin Herbert, right? Kind of feels that way. And the thing with Trevor Lawrence is he's been good, but he's never really been great, right? 76.8 grade last season, 79.7 the year before. Like, it's good, but it's never what we expected Trevor Lawrence to be. Can he still be that again at 25 years old? I think yes, right? And now you just added the number 1 receiver in this draft class to your team. I think it only gets better for Trevor Lawrence. So I would have him at 7. I think I have both Jordan Love and CJ Stroud above Caleb Williams. And hear me out on this. Jordan Love, 77.9 grade, 26 years old, back-to-back good seasons, actually 3 good seasons in a row, right? 78.7, 83 in 2023, and then 77.7 last year. So there's some consistency at a pretty high level for him. And you can look at Caleb's weapons and say, look at all the things they did for him. But you forget that Jordan Love also just got, a first-round receiver with a ton of speed in Matthew Golden. They did add, whether or not you agree with the pieces they added to the offensive line, they did add pieces to the offensive line to make that situation better. I also believe in the coach and what he's done, and the coach has already shown us that he's a good coach in the NFL, right? We don't have to think that, his pedigree reflects that he will be a good head coach. Like, he's already a good head coach in Matt LaFleur. CJ Stroud, kind of a similar conversation, slightly different, right? CJ Stroud, though, 82.8 grade. He's already achieved that. 78.9 last year. When the situation was bad last year, he was still a good quarterback in the NFL. Again, it doesn't take imagination to get there. He's only 23 years old. I like the receivers that they added to this situation. And I think the team just put itself in a little bit of a better situation so that when some good free agents start to come up, they should have money to spend and go get them and make that situation consistently better. So I still think I'd bet on both of those guys over Caleb Williams, who in his rookie year, it was a lot of inconsistency, a 67.1 grade. He's basically the same age as CJ Stroud anyway. And it's a new head coach that's never been a full-time head coach. Yes, I think he's the best head coach option that has come up in years for first-time head coaches. Ben Johnson. I love Luther Burden. I love Colston Loveland. I love the additions that they have. I love the offensive line additions that they have, but I still need Caleb to do it, right? He still needs to go to work every day and put in the work to get better. Can he do that? Is he going to be that guy? Until I see it, I'm not going to take that bet on over guys like Love and Stroud. So I think go ahead.
I was say the thing with Stroud, though, is his offensive line got worse, in my opinion. They got even worse than last year. And that scares me. At least I could point to Caleb and be like, well, everything got better.
So it got worse in that they got rid of Laremy Tunsil, but they replaced Laremy Tunsil with a worse player, yes, but they improved other aspects of the offensive line. They also added 2 receivers that I think are better than what was behind Nico Collins last year when everybody was hurt, right? Like, the receiving game should be better. The offensive line as a whole should maybe have a higher floor than it did, right? So those things definitely matter. But then again, it's like Caleb has all the weapons in the world. It's just, I need to see him do it, right? So it's Jayden Daniels at 6, it's Trevor Lawrence at 7, it's Jordan Love at 8, it's CJ Stroud at 9, and it's Caleb Williams at 10 for me. And then I guess the conversation with Hurts and May, I think I go May just because of the things, right? Like a lot of new weapons. I like Diggs going there. I like Kyle Williams, the speedy young receiver that they added. Whether or not I like Will Campbell, it's still a huge addition on their offensive line at one of the spots. I like the coaching change. I think Mike Vrabel basically raises the floor of everyone that he coaches. So I like that. Josh McDaniels as an offensive coordinator is a good offensive coordinator. So like whether or not you like him, it's still a good move. I like it, right? I like his future. Jalen Hurts, again, he's going to be 27 this year. His highest graded season, 86.4, is high, but this past year when he won the Super Bowl, it wasn't necessarily because of him, 76.3. I think he relies a little bit too much on the pieces around him. The team is getting very expensive. At some point, I think you got to start to pull out pieces and figure out how to make this thing work with him stepping up and being the guy. I think they're pretty close to that happening. Will it stay together when that happens?
Yeah, I think the thing with Jalen Hurts is we've seen the high watermark for Jalen Hurts. We've seen the best from him already, in my opinion, which is a very good player. This is still a starter in all 22. We're sitting here talking about whether he's top 10 or not on this list. So with that context in mind, though, as you said, it really doesn't get any better than he's had it the last year in particular, in the last couple of years. And he's kind of topped out mid 80s. Then this past year, 76.3, high 70s, which again is kind of buoyed by that run grade, which is great. But that's the first thing to go for a quarterback. And again, how long can you hold this thing together? Lane Johnson's getting up there in age. Obviously, the offensive line is still very strong. The receivers are still very strong for this season. But at a certain point, you can't keep the entire band together. And when that happens, then what happens to the floor for Jalen Hurts? As far as, the floor gets much lower. And if his passing cannot carry those other aspects of his game at a high enough level to be, top 10 in the league. Again, this isn't the discourse around, he's a terrible we're not talking about that type of, Twitter argument stuff here. We're just talking about in the context of, can his arm carry him to a top 10 level when the environment inevitably erodes? That's the question that perhaps holds him back from that top 10 listing. And then you put in a 4-year age difference between someone like him and Drake May, who you would anticipate that situation getting much better because he's starting from the bottom, not to quote mediocre song lyrics here. I would go with May in that situation, and just opt for those extra years at quarterback and just sort of ride the improvement that I expect to see, as opposed to buying a stock near its all-time highs.
All right, so we are at 12, right? We both got to our top 12. This next group, there's a lot of very interesting names, guys that have a little bit more experience or, have shown a high level of play, but maybe they're just never going to show us that top 10 ceiling. Maybe they don't have the draft pedigree, or maybe they've given us reason for concern, right? And in the system right now I think it's 13 here, the system is Kyler Murray, 14 is Baker Mayfield, 15 is Brock Purdy, 16 is Bo Nix, 17 is Jared Goff, 18 is Michael Penix Jr., 19 is Cam Ward, and 20 is Dak Prescott. Let's stop there. A lot of things to like about these guys, a lot of things maybe to be concerned about. Kyler Murray for me at the top of this list. I think I would have lower. I think I'm lower on Kyler Murray. Last year was supposed to be the year. I think I talked about this last episode, right? You add Marvin Harrison. You got him a franchise left tackle in Paris Johnson Jr., or maybe he's playing right tackle. I don't know where they have him. He was supposed to put it all together, and to get an 82 grade is still good, but maybe it shows me that he's never going to be truly great, right? Maybe there's going to be a limit to what he can achieve as a player, whether it's because of his size, whether it's because of his commitment to football, right? Whether it's a condition of the coaching that he's had to this point. Something concerns me, right? I said it last year. Marvin Harrison Jr. was just behind Jamar Chase for me as in terms of like the best receiving prospects we've seen. Kyler Murray got that as a gift in his basket, and it didn't really elevate him all that much last year, right? And that concerns me. I think if you put him in it, for example, Justin Herbert, I think Justin Herbert would have went to the moon, right? That concerns me. Baker Mayfield, right? 86th grade last year, the highest of his career. But there was a point recently where we weren't sure Baker Mayfield was going to be in the NFL any longer. So he loses his offensive coordinator that helped him achieve those heights. Two of his best receivers are really aging and dealing with injuries. They added another one in the draft, but are we sure that Baker Mayfield's surrounding environment this next season is going to be as good as it was last year? Brock Purdy, 82.4 grade after an 88.4, 2 great years in back-to-back seasons as a young player, right? The Mr. Irrelevant coming out of nowhere. But the situation is going to get worse before it gets better, right? Trent Williams is going to get old at some point. It's going to happen. It has to happen. It happens to everyone. They get rid of Deebo Samuel. Christian McCaffrey's injuries look like they're going to probably linger for the rest of his career. When is George Kittle's, run going to run out? Kyle Juszczyk they brought back, but it seems like that's going to be on a short leash. I don't know what the 49ers look like in 2 years. It's one of those situations, again, where maybe Brock Purdy for another year or two looks really good. They just paid him big money. But are we sure that he's a guy that's going to carry that team when some of those veterans start to age out? Those are the guys at the top of this list. I think Bo Nix has a really strong case to be a little higher on this list, considering a 76.4 grade as a rookie, even though it was a 25-year-old rookie. It was phenomenal. They added some players that I really liked to that offense for him. I like that. Jared Goff kind of aging out, right? 30 years old, kind of had his opportunity last year. That all the coaches came back for one last hurrah. Didn't happen. They all left. What does he look like without Ben Johnson? Michael Penix Jr., that 87.9 is a little deceiving. I think he did that in 3 games, right? Can he do that over the course of a long season? We don't know yet. He's also already 25 years old, and we don't really know what he looks like. Cam Ward hasn't stepped foot on an NFL field yet. And then there's Dak Prescott, right, who's entering his age 32 season after, a few years where there's been some injuries mixed with, some really great play. Do we project him continuing forward at a high level, or do we think that he's starting to run out of steam as well? There's a lot to unpack there. I don't even know if the guy that you have next is part of that list, but let me hear what you have to say. I need to shut up for a little bit.
Yeah, you shut up. I would have Baker Mayfield for sure above Kyler Murray. You could say 2.5, 3-year age difference there, but Kyler Murray, he led the league in scramble yards per attempt last year. That's fantastic. That's not something that lasts well into your 30s. To me, 35-year-old Baker Mayfield and 32-year-old Kyler Murray are about where you could project the end of their quote unquote primes. And to me, I just think Baker Mayfield is just the better player, more solid all around quarterback. Kyler Murray just doesn't, if you can't work well with a player like Marvin Harrison Jr., and I'm sure they're going to work on certain things, but we touched on it in a previous episode about the lack of timing from the pocket and the ability to allow routes to develop downfield for Kyler Murray, or the lack thereof, harming that sort of connection between him and Harrison. He's going to be 28 years old. I mean, he's been in the league for 6+ years now. It's pretty late for you to be developing that aspect of your game heading into year 7. So he is who he is. And who he is not something that, as opposed to someone like Baker Mayfield, ages well. Baker Mayfield can play when he's 35 years old because he's gotten way better at distributing the football and managing and running an offense effectively within structure. Kyler Murray gets rid of the ball very quickly or scrambles for some bonus yardage there and can't work with that sort of timing and rhythm downfield. It's pretty late in the game for him to develop that part of his game. So I think he is who he is, which is still sort of a low-end starter in all 22. So around that QB 12, QB 13, 14-ish range, who's going to pop a few weeks for you. But again, how sustainable or how long-term is his style of play? Just because he's 27 doesn't mean I'm going to put him above someone like Baker Mayfield. So to me, I would have Baker above him. Probably Bo Nix is next for me at 14. Given the age, the style of the offense, I think there's a natural progression that you can project with someone like Bo Nix. And his style probably doesn't lend itself to the highest ceiling because he's another one that gets the ball out very quickly, sort of ball distributor, can scramble a bit, right? Top 10 run grade, which is great for, for a quarterback, but not necessarily a Kyler Murray level scrambler. But he's in a good offense. He's got some good coaching there. Sean Payton knows what to do with a guy like him there. They're investing more in that offense. And again, he's just starting out. So I will take the projection of progression there and put Bo Nix above Kyler Murray. I think from there, I would slot Murray at 15? He probably rounds out the top 15 for me here because, like you said, it's only going to get better before it gets worse in San Francisco. They don't have the advantage of a rookie quarterback contract there like they had earlier with Purdy. We already saw that defense sort of really deteriorate. They were able to scavenge a couple pieces there, drafted Mykel Williams, but by and large, that defense lost a lot. That offense is going to lose a lot. Doesn't seem like a very happy sort of partnership there with Brandon Ayuk ever since he was signed as well. So just a lot of things to be sorted out. Trent Williams is getting older. So how are things going to look 2 years from now on the offensive side? Kyle Shanahan can only do so much, and that's enough to maybe put Purdy in like the middle of the pack around 17 or 18. But for me, he's clearly below someone like Kyler Murray. So I think the top 15, I would go again, then it'd give me Baker, Nix, Murray to round out the top 15. And then the conversation begins with whether you want Dak or Purdy. I think Purdy, given the age, maybe, sure. Okay. Dak also just got Pickens and now finally has another viable weapon outside of just one being CeeDee Lamb and a zombie at running back until they finally started Rico Dowdle, which was too late because Prescott was hurt by that point anyway. They've invested more in that offensive line. So the situation resembles what it was with Dak Prescott back in sort of his heyday, if you will, even though he is just 31 years old still. It resembles more of his high watermark years than it does even just the last 2. And if you're at this stage of the rankings, I don't think you're necessarily looking at a surefire quarterback for the next 8 to 10 years for yourself because those guys already went. the surefire young guys are all gone. Now you're choosing between a veteran who may have 4-ish years left or a younger player with some questions about either their situation or style of play and how that can sustain over the next, again, 3 to 4 years. And so for me, I can get Dak Prescott, age 32, 33, 34. Might be enough to put him next or just behind Brock Purdy for me. I may be out on a limb. People could yell at me, call me crazy if you want. I have big questions about what it's going to look like in Detroit after losing both coordinators, including Ben Johnson. Not that it's going to be bad, but if we also have seen the best already from Jared Goff, then how is that trending versus someone like Dak, who had more reinvestment in his offensive line, had George Pickens at receiver now, and they've kind of turned over the leaf at running back? I don't know. I think I'd take Dak over that.
I'm in agreement with you. A lot of what you said makes sense. I actually have Bo Nix as my 13, so he would be at the top of this group for me for a lot of the reasons you said. But again, it goes back to what I said earlier, which is the team and the chemistry and what their coaching staff looks like. All of that matters and how I can project it forward. And I think Nix's situation probably is the most advantageous at the moment. I could see it for the next 5 years being very, very good and continuing to get better. So Nix for me would be next. I think Purdy would be right behind him because, yes, I think it starts to look rough, but we're still talking about a 25-year-old quarterback that has 80 grading under his belt in 2 consecutive seasons and has Kyle Shanahan as his head coach, right? And Kyle Shanahan doesn't seem to be going anywhere. So I think I still take Purdy next, which would be 13, 14. After that, I think it starts getting a little murky, right? I think I agree with you, Baker over Kyler. Those would be my next 2 at 15, 16. I think Dak would be next at 17 for me. But after that, I think the conversation of Goff, Penix, Ward, and I think we need to bring in the next guy, which is Bryce Young. I think I have Bryce Young at the top of that list. So I understand Bryce Young as a rookie looked really rough, got benched at the beginning of last season as well. But if you look at the weekly summary tab, Ray, and look at those last few weeks of the season, there's a reason he got that grade all the way up to a 74.4. The last 6 weeks of the season, he was phenomenal, right? And really the last 8 games of his season, he was a different quarterback. They add Ted McMillan, Xavier Legette last year, back-to-back first-round pick receivers, right? The offensive line, Akeem Okwonu had his best year yet. Damian Lewis, Austin Corbett, Robert Hunt, Taylor Moton, like the group of players that are surrounding him is decent at this point. And I think Ted McMillan is a very good receiver. I don't think he's an elite prospect, but I think he's a very good prospect entering Bryce Young's kind of like a perfect quarterback for him. He's a guy that can play in tempo. He's a possession type of receiver. He's not necessarily just a big play guy. I think that's the type that works really well with Bryce Young. I think I like that over Michael Penix. Michael Penix, I had concerns about what his arm can be from an accuracy standpoint, play in, play out. Yes, he looked good for 3 games. 3 games is nothing. Like I need to see much, much more than that. But I could be very wrong, right? Cam Ward, I talked about how I don't really love the situation that he's fallen into. I think it's a coaching staff that's going to be refreshed after this season. So he's going to have a new head coach next year. Don't really know who that's going to be. I think Ben Johnson was the last one that I was really excited about. Don't know who else is out there for him, right? They don't really have a number 1 receiver. Calvin Ridley's more of a number 2. He's already 23 years old, the same age as Bryce Young. I don't know, right? I don't know what it's going to look like. So I think Bryce Young is at the top of the list. I think Michael Penix would be behind him for me. And then I think Cam Ward would be behind him, with Jared Goff falling in behind all of those guys for the same reasons you said, right? New offensive coordinator, how much of his success and the success of a lot of the players on that offense were due to Ben Johnson, what he was doing, right? I don't know if that continuation is going to work with whoever the new offensive coordinator is for them there. I think it was the quarterback coach, but it's not Ben Johnson, right? It needs to be better. I need to see Jared Goff in this new system before I invest anything in him. And the fact that he's going to be 31 this year definitely puts him a leg down, right? We're talking 7 years of quarterback play from the other guys if they're successful compared to a Jared Goff.
I don't want to agree with everything you said but I kind of do. You kind of sold me on on Penix above him there, because this is sort of territory where do you believe in the young quarterback or do you not? Do you think they're a bust or do you not? Because if you do, then forget it, right? I would hope by now, quarterback 17, 18, wherever we are here, you got your number one guy. So you're probably chasing a little bit of upside with your second quarterback there. So you might skew a little bit more towards the youth, the upside, the potential, more so than a 30-plus-year-old quarterback who just lost one of the best play callers in the league. So I kind of agree with everything you said there. And then the question becomes, well, do you take him over a Darnold or a Tua? And I probably would. I think at that point, I would probably still take Goff because he still has a great running game, still has a lot of good weapons, good situation there. So I think the way you slotted it there is exactly right. I probably wouldn't change anything. And when it comes to those young guys, just a matter of preference, whether it's the first overall pick in Cam Ward, or do you like what Atlanta has done around Michael Penix and you liked him enough last year that you're going to go for it? Again, though, Penix is one hit away from, he's already torn his knees twice and his shoulders. He's one injury away from like Jason White territory, basically, and having to just hang him up because he probably can't hold up. So that is one concern too you have to bring up with him.
It is. That's a great point out. We are at 22. We are at quarterback 22, and there are a couple guys that I think there's an argument to be made should be ranked above Goff. I think I have Goff where I have him. You may disagree with me. I'll read out the list and then we can talk about it. So 22 is Sam Darnold, the Seahawks' new quarterback. Tua Tagovailoa is next with the Dolphins. Geno Smith, the new Raiders quarterback, is after that at 23, 24, 25. J.J. McCarthy, Minnesota's quarterback at 26. Justin Fields, Jets quarterback at 27. Jaxson Dart, the Giants' new quarterback at 28. Matthew Stafford at 29. And then Aaron Rodgers at 30. I think the two players that you could have an argument to be above Goff, in my opinion, we could talk about it, is McCarthy and Dart. All right. And the one that I feel a little bit strongly about is McCarthy. McCarthy entering last year, right, had one preseason game, looked phenomenal, hurt his knee, all of a sudden out for the entire year, right? Kind of a freak thing. Sam Darnold blows up, looked fantastic. Sam Darnold, the quarterback, the new quarterback for the Seahawks at 22. Tua Tagovailoa at 23, Geno Smith at 24, now with the Raiders. 25 is rookie or second-year player J.J. McCarthy with the Vikings. Justin Fields, new face of the Jets at 26. 26, did I do that right? Jaxson Dart at 27, the Giants rookie. 28 is Matthew Stafford, and 29, Aaron Rodgers. I think I missed one. I think that's 30, but let's roll with it. This list is interesting to me because I think there are two players that technically could compete for Goff's spot at 21. And to me, that's J.J. McCarthy and Jaxson Dart. And I'm going to start talking about McCarthy. Still just 22 years old, had an amazing preseason last year before hurting his knee and just all of a sudden being out the entire year. It set off Sam Darnold's amazing season, right? 82.7. But even with that 82.7, the Vikings said, we really like what we have in McCarthy. We're going to give him the opportunity. And there isn't a better situation, in my opinion, in the entire NFL than the one that J.J. McCarthy is stepping into. This is a team with the NFL's number one receiver in Justin Jefferson. They also have Jordan Addison at receiver. They, have Aaron Jones at running back, which is exactly the type of running back you want for a rookie quarterback, a guy that can call things out for you, has experience. And then they go and add three pieces to the interior of the offensive line, completely redoing it to pair with Christian Darrisaw and Brian O'Neill. They had Donovan Jackson, Ryan Kelly, and Will Fries. It doesn't get better than the situation that McCarthy has. And you're also talking about a coach that through kind of thick and thin, the Vikings have stuck with and has proven that no matter what the situation looks like, no matter what you throw at him, he can be successful. McCarthy, I think there's a world, again, I don't necessarily think McCarthy was this type of prospect, but I think there's a world that exists where the Vikings make the playoffs and McCarthy has like an 80-something graded season in his first year as a starter, and I wouldn't be shocked. Saying all of that, there's also a situation where we didn't love him as a prospect and maybe he sucks, right? Like maybe he's terrible. I still think I take that chance over what is left in the tank of Jared Goff? What do you think?
The situation is so good. I can't pass on him for a Sam Darnold in Seattle or a Tua in Miami with his injury history. And again, assuming I have taken my quarterback already, which you should when you're looking at quarterback 23, give or take in a startup, you should have your guy already. So at that point, you should definitely chase the upside and see what you have in McCarthy if he's still available. If you need a guy for a year or something, or then yeah, maybe you go ahead and Darnold might be the safest name of that list up top. But otherwise, I think it has to be McCarthy. Whether you're lukewarm on him as a prospect or not, he has all those weapons. He has a great offensive line, and he has a fantastic play caller. So for me, I think that everything is tailor-made for him to do so well. He has to be really bad to fail in this situation. If he's average, he's going to look good. If he's pretty good, he's going to look great. If he's good, he's going to look slightly better than great. And if he's great, he's going to look elite based on everything that's around him. So I don't see how you can't take McCarthy at the top of this list here. Yes, it's unknown. He's coming off of an injury. You might not have loved him as a prospect, but at this stage, he has to be the name. He's the clear name here.
All right. Are you ready for my Jaxson Dart kind of speech?
I'm probably not going to like it, but yeah, sure.
All right. So the Giants, I had a second round grade on Jaxson Dart. The Giants decided to trade up into the first round, the end of the first round, to take Jaxson Dart. I don't necessarily think Giants brass allows the GM and the coach to make that decision if they weren't going to keep the coach and the GM around for an additional couple of years, right? I think it bought those guys some time by the Giants allowing them to do this. Obviously, if Jaxson Dart goes in and looks absolutely terrible, maybe that changes. I don't necessarily think that'll be the case. The supporting cast for Dart at this point, right? Andrew Thomas is still a force to reckon with when he's healthy. He's only a couple years away from being the highest graded left tackle in all 22, right? He was our highest scoring one a couple years ago, but he's dealt with injuries the past couple of years, so we haven't seen that. I expect him to be back this year and for him to be strong. Malik Neighbors is honestly, in the debate for a top 4 or 5 receiver in the NFL after just his rookie season. With those two pieces, you have to start to think, okay, this offense has something to it. They've redone a lot of the offensive line. It's still not great, but it's at least competent. Tyron Tracy and Cam Scadaboo at running back are two pieces that I like, and I think they complement each other really well. They add a different element to this offense that gives it a little bit of power. I like that. And Jaxson Dart doesn't have to rush in there and be the guy on day one. So if you're talking about right at this point, we're kind of almost in quarterback 3 territory in a 12-man league. If I have to choose my quarterback 3, I don't necessarily care if the guy's not a starter right away. I don't necessarily care if I have to wait 6 games, 8 games, even an entire year to see what he can be, as long as they're developing him to be the guy that's going to be successful in the long term. I like all of that, right, for my rookie quarterback. I always talk about how I prefer my rookie quarterbacks to sit for a year, if not more than that, because I think they do learn something on the bench, right? I really do. I think they learn how to conduct themselves in the NFL. I think they learn the playbook. I think they have time to develop without necessarily the pressure of the spotlight. I like all of those things for Jaxson Dart. New York's a big environment. Can he make it? I don't know. But at least I know that the coach and GM will likely be there for another year to see it through, because if they weren't, I think I would struggle to see the long-term potential of a Jaxson Dart. But I think I'm buying him over, maybe not before Goff, but I think before a lot of the names on this list here.
That Jaxson Dart only buys them time after they start 1-4, and then they put him in week 6 as a starting quarterback, and he buys them like 4 more weeks, and then they get fired anyway. I don't think the coach. I don't think Dable's going to be there beyond this year, which I think he's a good coach. It's kind of a shame he was just handed a horrendous roster, and that would take years to really overhaul and get back to competitiveness. and he's going to take the brunt of that and likely fail as a result.
Hmm.
So I don't think those coaches are going to be there, which brings us into what happens to young quarterbacks who suffer from coaching changes and how that hinders their development and performance. And this is a quarterback who needs development. He's not NFL ready as a player. He's got a lot of tools, a lot of things to like, but he's not NFL ready coming from that offense at Ole Miss. And I think they're going to have no choice but to try to save their jobs by throwing him into the fire after starting out 1-5, 2-5, whatever it is. And it's just not going to work out for him. And so at this point, I stay away. If I wanted to grab a young quarterback with upside as my quarterback 2, perhaps quarterback 3, I already missed out on guys like McCarthy, a guy like a Penix, guys of that realm. At this point, I'm going to go ahead and take Matthew Stafford and say I might only have him for another year, but he's in a good offense. He's going to produce. He's stable. If anything happens to my top guy, my season is not derailed by having Matt Stafford take the reins here. So at that point, if I'm not looking at someone with some years left, right? If I'm missing out on the young quarterback, the young rookie or second-year player with a lot of upside, and Darnold and Tua are gone, then I'm looking at Geno or Stafford at that point, just to make sure that my season doesn't go kaput if something happens to my QB1. I just don't like the way things are trending for Dart in New York. Not necessarily through fault of his own, but I think they're going to try to save themselves as that ship sinks this coming season, and that's not a good thing for Jaxson Dart.
All right. Well, I hope that you're wrong for New York's sake, right? I mean, they've had a long few years of tough play, tough picks. I think can you go ahead and hit Tua's name there, and let's just take a look at his year over year, because I think there needs to be a conversation before we get to like the Staffords, in my opinion, right? In my opinion, go to the overview tab if you don't mind.
Yep.
While there is major concerns with Tua's injury stuff, right? And I totally get that. When Tua plays football, Tua's a good football player, right? We have an 81.9 graded season, an 88.4 graded season. Last year, the injuries were really bad, 70.2. We're looking at a 27-year-old quarterback that almost hit 90, right? A year and a half ago. Am I saying that the injury stuff is not super scary? No, it totally is super scary, because you don't want a quarterback that you can only trust for 6 games a year, right? That's not helpful. But I still think that, does Tua have 3 or 4 or 5 years left of his NFL career if he can just stay upright? The grading is there for me. I think that's got to be more valuable than a Matthew Stafford or an Aaron Rodgers when there's just 1 year left. What do you think about that?
I see the argument. I could be convinced. I don't look at this point. I don't feel strongly about any of these guys. I'm taking like an offensive tackle 6 before I take these guys, honestly. So yeah, sure. I get it. It's just the Dolphins are going to probably be bad again. You just said if he stays upright. As of today, who's his left tackle, Chris? Who's his left tackle?
The guy that plays left tackle.
Patrick Paul. Okay, I'm taking Matthew Stafford.
That's a really good point. Holy cow, they're starting Patrick Paul as left tackle. God.
As of May 20th, but we'll see. But
yeah,
if that's what they do, forget it. I'm taking Stafford because I can't trust Tua to stay upright in that situation.
Yeah, that's a good call out. I think the other, right, so like I think it's some combination of, I think McCarthy is at the top. I think Goff would be next for me. I think Dart is after that. Darnold would be after that for me. Tua after that. Geno after that. Stafford, Rodgers. That's just me. But the last 2 guys on this list, I think it's 31 and 32 here, is Anthony Richardson and the rookie quarterback for the Saints that they added with a 2nd-round pick. So not a huge investment, but Tyler, I think his name is Sow, is how you say it. So
Shook. Oh my gosh, Chris.
Shook.
I should have.
That's Shook.
I should have just warned the audience.
That's Shook. How is that Shook? Anyway, okay, Tyler Shook. 25-and-a-half-year-old rookie with injury history. I'm pretty far out on him. Pretty really far out on him. Don't know if there's a reason why you think he should be higher on this list or Anthony Richardson. I definitely can see an argument where Richardson should be higher on this list. But seeing that they just brought in Daniel Jones, it really is a crapshoot, right? And I think the other quarterbacks on this list, we didn't mention Justin Fields yet. We probably should talk about him too. But those three guys, do we know that either any of those three guys are really the quarterback after this season or even for the entirety of this season?
No, I mean, maybe Fields for the entirety of the season. But outside of that, no, we don't. Like, we don't know if Shook could survive the season in New Orleans with the dearth of talent they have. The offensive line is okay, which is good. It's about it. Yeah, Fields probably going to play this year. He's going to bring down all the other good things they have going on that offense, and that'll be that. But I think there's a reason not all 12 teams end up with 3 quarterbacks in their depth chart. And it's because they have to start picking from names like this versus like a Juice Scruggs or something on the offensive line, and they end up going with Juice Scruggs. I'm more interested in, do you go ahead and take the plunge on a Dylan Gabriel or a Jalen Milroe? Like, at that point, I'm just picking those names and just, seeing what I could maybe capture as a lottery ticket. I mean, I'll say Shador, I guess. Just throw him in here. Will Howard. Like, I'm looking at those guys. At this point, why not? Why not take a shot at one of those guys? We know what Justin Fields is. Even if he plays the whole year, to me, that's someone you could probably pick up on waivers. He's not going to be anything special for you if you have to ever put him in your starting lineup. Low 70s, maybe mid tops in a given week. He is what he is at this point. Tyler Shook, the situation is just so poor over there in New Orleans. Russell Wilson, again, we don't anticipate things going well there, but if you want to lump him in with some of the older experienced guys as a sort of backstop for stability at your quarterback 3, sure. But other than that, I'm just Milroe, Gabriel, just give me a lottery ticket. Just that's what I'll do at this point.
Yeah, there's an argument for it for sure. I mean, Anthony Richardson was still the 4th overall pick 2 years ago. I think they give him every single opportunity to prove that he's not the guy before they pull the plug on him. So I would expect him to start the year as the starter and give him that opportunity one last time, right? You look at that little stretch in the middle of the season with the Jets, Detroit, and New England. Like, he can do it. Like, he is capable of doing it and being that guy. It's just the season's long. And when you're that big and you have that kind of athleticism and you take that kind of pounding game after game, it's a long season for him, right? So can he actually last like 6-7 games into the season healthy and with a good run of games, right? I think it's going to be tough. But if, again, he was the 4th overall pick 2 years ago, if I'm betting on anyone, it's him. Because I even think if they decide to move on from him, there's going to be other teams that give him an opportunity, right? Like, for example, Justin Fields is getting right now with the Jets. Teams will do that. Shook, couldn't agree with you more. I think it's going to be a rough situation there in New Orleans. I also just don't think that the investment necessarily warrants them not picking a quarterback next year, even if he's decent. It reminds me a little bit of who was the Texans quarterback like the year before CJ Stroud? Do you remember?
Dude with the long neck, right? Long neck guy.
Long neck dude. Yeah.
Yeah. Guy with the long neck. I know. I the guy with the long neck. Just, yeah, continue.
Because like, if he was a first round pick or a top 10 pick with the season that he had, you'd probably go, yeah, it was decent. Like, they'll definitely give him another chance and like maybe he'll be okay. But they didn't because he wasn't, right? I think that could be the case here. Russell Wilson, I agree with you. I'd probably loop him maybe above some of these guys because I think you get decent play from him. He's a veteran. I don't think I go Milroe just for the sake of, like, they did sign Sam Darnold for at least 2 years. He's going to be the quarterback for 2 years before Milroe would get an opportunity. I also don't know if he's ever going to get an opportunity, being that he was a 3rd-round pick, and there are rumors that they're going to use him similar to Taysom Hill was used in New Orleans. I would like that, right, as a player, but not necessarily for a quarterback, right? I don't think it's worth the investment. Dylan Gabriel, I think it's kind of just a messy situation with him and Shador, Pickett, and Flacco. Like, you you have no idea who they're going to go with. And again, they did just trade for a first-round pick next year. They now have 2. So again, even if Gabriel is good, is he good enough that's going to prevent them from drafting another guy next year? Probably not, right? He'd have to be Brock Purdy level good, which is kind of my comp for him. I think he has that kind of game in him. But the 49ers at that point in time compared to where the Browns are today are significantly different in terms of talent level around him. So I just don't think that's even feasible, right? To look as good as Brock Purdy did. After that,
bro, just give me Joe Flacco.
Yeah, Flacco.
Just give me Joe Flacco.
Give me Sam Howell as Minnesota's backup. I kind of like that, right? Like I think there's a chance that ends up happening.
A case for maybe not build a case for, but first off, long neck guy Davis Mills.
Davis Mills.
The thing about Anthony Richardson, he had the highest ADOT in the league at 12.3 yards. That's like 2.5 yards more than the second highest ADOT quarterback in Trevor Lawrence, I think at 9.9. That's huge. That's a tall ask for any quarterback, especially one that isn't necessarily lauded for accuracy, to do over and over and over again. So maybe they ask him to dial it back some. Maybe part of Tyler Warren is the fact that Tyler Warren can, he's a 3-level target, right? He catches short, medium, long, shovel passes. He could take the damn snap himself. He could snap it to him. We saw that in his college tape too. But maybe a more big quarterback-friendly target in the short and intermediate areas might help Anthony Richardson out a little bit more. Maybe. That's the only thing. But I'm not sure they give him as much leash as you're thinking. I'm thinking like he has till like, I don't know, the first week of October. And if things haven't turned around by then, we're watching Daniel Jones run the show here. But I just thought that was interesting that his ADOT is just way out there and is something that probably has to be reined in.
Oh, for sure. I think that's a great call out. Only other guy you would mention, I think it's worth mentioning. I would probably have him above Jalen Milroe and Dylan Gabriel. It's Will Howard. I understand he was taken much later in the draft than those two guys. He was a 6th round pick. But the Steelers just don't have competition, right? If Aaron Rodgers decides he's going to hang it up, right? Because he hasn't told anyone that he's playing. It could be that they start the year with Will Howard, and if not, it's Mason Rudolph. We all know how that will go. But Will Howard, on the other hand, did just win a national championship. Is a big-bodied quarterback. Like he is from a size perspective, he looks like an NFL quarterback, 6'4", 235. He has some athletic ability. I don't think he's just a pure pocket guy like a Mason Rudolph. So I think he kind of edges him out in terms of what he's capable of being. So there's a chance Will Howard is a quarterback next year, and the Steelers don't necessarily have multiple, first round picks next year where they can trade up and get their guy. And they're going to be a good team, right? It's like Mike Tomlin isn't capable of losing more than 8 games. So they're not going to pick top 10 ever. So could Will Howard be the quarterback this year? And if he proves that he's half decent, he's the quarterback next year too. I think there's the most opportunity with Will Howard compared to some of these other guys.
Maybe he's not throwing at Jeremiah Smith anymore, but yeah. Do you think Deshaun is he ever going to play again?
No.
I might take a shot at him at this point.
No, he never plays on the football field ever again. What I think Deshaun Watson does is he stays in the injury tent and collects paychecks that are guaranteed to him as long as he doesn't retire until his career is over. Until that final paycheck is made and there's no more guaranteed money. Or, it could be that the Browns say, all right, you have a year left of guaranteed money. We're just going to pay you off. I do not think Deshaun Watson plays another game of football, potentially not even in the UFL or whatever other leagues there are, just because I think he's going to be blackballed. And also he made enough money where he would never have to do that.
Okay. I just don't know what the Raiders are going to do 2 years from now. That's all. I'm just asking the question.
Arch Manning. It's not going to be Deshaun Watson.
Okay. All right. Just asking.
What about?
So I don't know where we ended up with 31 and 32, but yeah, I stopped caring after 16 and then like really stopped caring after like 28. But
the listeners might have stopped too. So let's just say thank you, everybody. That is the list for today. We're going to go through a few other positions, right? We'll try to keep it at like the more important positions for all 22, just to have some offseason fun. And maybe we have some other things baked in here as well. Go to the App Store, download the app today, or go to all-22.com, right? And start playing all 22. Remember, it is the only fantasy football game where you have full 53-man rosters that include offensive linemen, where you get to use personnel packages and have access to PFF grading and advanced stats to make decisions each week. So again, to learn more, sign up, go to all-22.com or go to the App Store. And as always, thank you for tuning in. If you haven't yet, give us a follow on Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok, and X at all22_PFF. And then give us a review wherever you're watching or listening to your podcast. Have a great night.
Go.